getting more and more frequent, and the periods of feeling well were lasting shorter and shorter. She was, in fact, failing. And then she began to get aches and pains in all of the joints, which indicated it's getting pretty near to the end. And at this point, something very fortunate happened. Her father was putting some siding on the house, and he fell off the bottom rung of a ladder and hurt his back. And because he hurt his back, he went to a chiropractor. And the chiropractor said to him, bring in the whole family. We don't take individual patients. The chiropractor happened to be me, and we do maintenance care on the family. So we told him, go get your family. And he said, there's nothing wrong with their backs. And I sat him down with his wife, and I explained to them what I explained to you tonight. And he said, do you think you could help my daughter? And I said, 100% yes, I can help your daughter. You mean you can cure leukemia? He said, no, I didn't say that. I said, we can help her. If we can restore the level of her resistance, if we can raise it just 1%, we've helped her. Let's do it. Let's see what happens. All right, we started to get her under chiropractic care. In short, 3 months later, she went back into Nyack Hospital for a bone marrow test. Results negative. Lymphocyte count 46%. It's now down to about 41%. And it's been maintaining at that level for the past 3 or 4 or 5 years. Her little body recovered. There's no trace of leukemia in her today. Now, I don't offer chiropractic as a cure for leukemia, but by the Lord Harry, if there's a chance, isn't it worth taking it? I see people sit back and they give up as hopeless. I see, as we sit and talk here now, your local hospital, the beds are filled with people who are sitting there waiting to die because some almighty genius has said there is no hope. Lie there and rot. And I say to you, there is hope. There is something to be done, because this human body, when it's working properly, has the ability to recover from every disease known to man. There's no hopeless case. I don't care what the condition is. And when we're all through and we take questions, you're going to say, what about this disease and what about that disease? And you're only going to get one answer. If you're asking about diseases, chiropractic doesn't treat disease. But every human being, no matter what the disease, every human being is better off if his body works a little better. And here's how chiropractic relates to health and to the body working a little better. Some of you may say, well, if this body is that smart, what in the world do we need chiropractors for? And I'll show you that right now. Let me give you a little anatomy sketch here, and I hope most of you can see this blackboard. That, believe it or not, is what your brain looks like. Now, you may have thought the brain is just a blob sitting up in the head. It isn't. It's a blob on a stick, the way I've shown it, all right? This brain, of course, is the most vital organ in the body. So important that nature designed it first to regulate and control all others. It's the only one you're going to get through life, and it has very special protection that no other organ has. We talk about the heart and kidneys being vital. Nothing is as important. Nothing has the kind of protection that the brain does. It is surrounded by solid bone. You may think it's solid bone all the way through. It isn't. Somewhere in there, in that skull, there's a brain. But you'll notice it's not all contained in the cranial vault. The brain extends all the way down the body. Now, down here, we call it the spinal cord. It's still part of the same brain. And you'll notice that the brain extends out of the cranial vault through a big hole. Now, I know it's not very scientific to tell you have a hole in your head, and you don't like to hear that, but you really do. Here, let's take a look at little Willie here, if we can manage this and a microphone at the same time. This is a view of the spine. This is what the spine looks like, as a fiberglass model. And this bone on the top here represents the bone in your skull. Okay. The bottom bone in the skull is the top bone in the spine. There it is. And you'll notice as you look at it, there's a great big hole in there. You see? You really do have a hole in your head. Now, of course, as I said, it's not very scientific to say you have a hole in your head, so in science we give that a name in Latin. And in Latin, that hole is called the foramen magnum, which means large hole. Right? The brain extends through that large hole all the way down the length of the body, and it's just as important down here as it is up there. So it has the same kind of protection of solid bone. Now, of course, if that bone were just one piece, the way I've shown it here, you wouldn't be able to bend or twist or turn. So old Mother Nature, in her wisdom, has taken this bone and cut it up into pieces. 24 movable segments called vertebrae, the bones of the spine. And that spinal cord runs inside the bones of the spine. And in between each pair of bones, in between each pair of vertebrae, big nerve trunks come out and go out to the various organs. Remember I told you how everything in this body fits so perfectly, your fingers fit your hand? Well, the bones are shaped in such a perfect way that there's an opening between each pair, exactly the right size and shape for these big nerve trunks that come out. And when those nerve trunks come out, they divide. Each one will divide. Each one actually consists of millions of nerve fibers, long, thin spaghettis. A nerve fiber is about 100 times smaller than a human hair. That's how fine they are. You can't see them without a microscope. So when we talk about a nerve coming out of here, we're talking about a big bunch of millions of nerve fibers. And when it gets out, it'll divide in two and spread out a little and divide again and again and again in much the same way as the electricity is brought into this building. It's generated probably in a big power station somewhere. And as the cable leaves the power station, it divides into two. One goes north and one goes south. And it divides again, and one goes east and one goes west. And it divides and subdivides till one cable comes down this street. And one tiny little cable branches off into this building. And one minute wire comes down to this light bulb, which incidentally is not working. This light bulb is like that corpse we were talking about there before. There's nothing wrong with the light bulb. The only reason it doesn't work is it has no electricity, no energy. We could give it electricity, and it works. And that corpse, if it had electricity, if it had life energy, wouldn't be a corpse. It'd be a living body. And the job of these nerves is very similar to the job of the wires that carry electricity to this light bulb. The brain generates electricity. As a matter of fact, right now in the University of Pennsylvania, in their medical school, in one of the laboratories, they have a radio whose only source of power is the brain of a rabbit. This rabbit is hooked up to a radio, and the energy from the rabbit's brain keeps the radio going. The radio has it's not plugged into any outlets, it has no batteries, no transistors, no power source except the brain of the rabbit. And it works, but unfortunately, because it's draining off the life energy from the rabbit only lives about 2 weeks, and then it dies. And then the radio stops. And they hook up another rabbit, and it starts again. Apparently, this electrical energy is vital to life. That's what the difference is between a living thing and a dead thing, is this electrical energy generated in the brain and passing over these electrical cables, which we call nerves, to all parts of the body. Let's draw in a couple of the organs here, and we'll see the relationship. Now, about now, I should admit to you that I never was an art major. Well, I told you earlier I was an English major. All right, now you're going to know I was not an art major. This is a kidney. All right, you recognize that, right? Yeah. Now you know what it is, by golly, all right? That's a Christmas Valentine. Well, let's really put in a kidney. We'll put in the kidney down here somewhere. There's a kidney. Sitting up over the kidney is that adrenal gland that makes adrenaline and cortisone. We'll put in here a stomach. And we'll put on this side, let's see, we'll put in the liver. It looks like a liver, doesn't it? All right, we'll identify it. One chopped liver. L-I-V-E-R. Okay. Under the liver on a little stalk is the gallbladder. We'll identify that too. If we can't get the word gallbladder in there, we'll abbreviate it. We'll call that L-B-J. All right? How about the spleen? That gets a nerve supply from the spine. The reproductive organs, they get a nerve supply from the spine. The eyes, sure, the eyes have to have a nerve supply from the spine. The ears certainly do. Do you know that the first chiropractic patient, the first one ever, was totally deaf? And his hearing was restored by chiropractic. We had a patient last week who came in because originally came in because he'd had 2 heart attacks and high blood pressure, and he was a man in his early 70s, and he frankly didn't want to have a 3rd heart attack. So he came under chiropractic maintenance care to stay healthy. After he'd been under care for, a while anyway, a couple of years, he then told me that he'd been wearing glasses for 40 years. He was not allowed by law to drive a car unless he was wearing glasses. It was written on his license that he was permitted to drive only when wearing his glasses. The only trouble was he couldn't see with his glasses anymore. Chiropractic had so improved his vision that he didn't need glasses anymore. Now, that's not going to happen in every case, but it happened with him, because the eyes get a nerve supply from the spine, as does the heart, the kidney, the stomach, the spleen, Every organ in the body. All right, now the only way that you can ever be healthy is when every organ has a proper nerve supply. The spine is the protection of this vital organ, the brain and spinal cord. The life energy generated in the brain passes down inside the spine and then out over nerves to the organs. If the organs have a good, strong, healthy nerve supply, they work properly. If we were to cut a nerve, the organ at the other end of that nerve wouldn't work. If we deprived all of your body of its nerve supply, like they do up in Sing Sing when they plug them into a 220 outlet up there, and you got no more nerve supply, they short-circuit the whole system, your body doesn't work. Then they take a living thing and convert it into a corpse. There was a time, of course, there are other states that are not quite as civilized as New York. And when they want to deprive somebody of his life, they remove this part of his body, the part that generates the electricity. They take that away, you see, and then the rest of it doesn't work too well. What they're proving is what nature has always known and science has learned, that this electricity is the vital life energy which is the difference between a living body and a corpse. Every organ, every cell needs that life energy, and the only way it can get it is from the brain over the nerves. If we cut a nerve to the heart, well, if we cut all the nerves to the heart couldn't work. It would beat a few times out of reflex, and then it would stop. If we cut all the nerve supply to the adrenal gland, your body wouldn't make adrenaline, and you'd be dead. Your body wouldn't make cortisone, and you'd be dead. Well, let's throw in another couple of glands. I like glands. They're fun. I'm not going to tell you which ones are the most fun. Oh, you read that book too, huh? All right. Let's put in here the thyroid gland. That's a very important gland. That regulates a lot of your body's metabolism. And the parathyroid gland, which has so much to do with calcium and arthritis. Well, they need a proper nerve supply, and they get that nerve supply from the spine. In fact, as the nerves branch out, they cover an area in a network so fine and so vast, if we were to take away all of your muscles and all of your skin, your body would keep its shape held together by the nerves, which branch out over the whole body. Every part of your body has a nerve supply and needs it to exist. If the nerves are cut, the part dies. Well, some of you have done this. Maybe you've had something happen to you which cuts down on nerve supply. Perhaps you'll sit in a peculiar way with one leg folded over the other, and you'll cut off the nerve supply into your foot, and your foot goes to sleep. It goes dead. Well, if you were to cut down that nerve energy to the arm would go to sleep. Cut down the nerve energy to the heart, well, that wouldn't work too well either. In order to function properly, every part needs a good, strong, healthy nerve supply. Now, I told you, when this spine is lined up, all of these holes are exactly the right size for the nerves which pass through them. But if something should happen to twist or distort this spine, the hole in between the bones will become a little smaller. See if I can demonstrate it here. As we twist the bone, the hole gets a little smaller, it gets closed up, and the nerve doesn't have room to function. So that some organ, some cell, some part of the body gets a depleted nerve supply. If it cut the nerve supply, you'd be dead. But it cuts down on the nerve supply, just as an electrician might put a rheostat on this wire to cut down on the amount of electricity. You can have a light bulb which works, or one which doesn't work. If it has 100% of electricity, it works 100%. If it has no electricity, it doesn't work at all. But if we could put a rheostat on there, we could give it 90% of its electricity. In fact, I've got a little secret for you. That's only had 90% of its electricity all this time. But when you're used to it, you don't even notice that's only 90% till somebody comes along and gives you the other 10%. Now, some of it, that's a rheostat. That's only a little rheostat, and all that does is put a resistance on the wire. And if I cut down on the amount of electricity, the bulb doesn't shine as brightly. It still works. Well, this is what happens in your body if something comes along and knocks one of these bones of the spine out of alignment. It cuts down on the amount of vital energy getting through over those nerves. If we cut the nerve to the kidney wouldn't work. If we cut down on the energy of the kidney will still work, but maybe this time at only 90% instead of 100%. The kidney will work very well at 90%. You wouldn't even know the difference. It's like that light bulb. You didn't even know it wasn't working. But after 10, 15, 20 years of that not working properly, do you know what the kidney does? The kidney has the job of pulling poisons out of the body. And if it's only pulling out 90%, what happens to the other 10%? They're circulating within the body, making you sick. And instead of realizing that you're sick, you start cop-outs and excuses and say, well, I'm not feeling too well. I guess I'm getting old. That is the most idiotic excuse for sickness I ever heard in my life. Here's a person supposed to live to be 120 to 150 years. He gets to be 45 or 50 or 60, and he says, well, I'm getting old. Yeah. That's like the fellow who went to the doctor because his knee hurt. And his doctor said, well, you got to expect that kind of thing, you know, you're getting old. He said, Doc, you know, the other knee's just as old and it doesn't hurt. Huh? We say the dumbest things, only because poisons are circulating through the body, you see. And we don't want to blame it on the real cause. Heaven forbid that we might get well. So what do? We start taking pills. If we deprive this kidney of a proper nerve supply, it becomes weak and sick and run down. And weak, sick, run down cells are the perfect food for bacteria. You know, we blame bacteria on the most idiotic things too. There's only one reason you get too many bacteria. If you supply food for them, you'll get bacteria. Let me talk to you ladies for a minute. Girls, if you were to put a dirty garbage can outside your house, the next morning you'd have flies, wouldn't you? Right? Now, you don't like flies, so you get your little can of DDT and you spray them all and you kill the flies. But you leave the dirty garbage can with the flies and you go out the next day. What are you going to find? More flies, right? And no matter how many times you kill them, there'll always be more flies. You can't kill off all the flies. But I'll tell you a little secret. If you don't want flies, don't leave a dirty garbage can. The flies will go bug the neighbors. They'll never come. If you have a clean garbage can, they won't come near you. Well, bacteria are no dumber than flies. Bacteria go where there is food, and the food for bacteria is weak, dying, sick, run-down cells with their life energy choked off. And as long as there's a weakened nerve supply and weak cells, the bacteria will come, and they'll set up housekeeping. And you have an infection. What do? You go trotting off for a shot of DDT, only you call it penicillin. And it kills the bacteria, and the infection's gone. And 6 months later, you've got another one. And you'll always get infection after infection after infection as long as there's food for bacteria. If you don't want bacteria, take away their food supply. They can't touch lively tissue. They can only thrive on sick tissue. If you don't want bacteria, have a good, strong, healthy nerve supply, there'll be no bacteria. They'll go bug the neighbors. And so it is with every organ and every condition. If we cut down nerve supply to the ovaries, well, this throws your chemical balance off. Now you get emotional problems because body chemistry controls emotions. Ask the girls about premenstrual blues. What is it? It's an emotional distress and tension brought about by a change in body chemistry. Pharmacists have known this for years. How do they treat it? Chemically. Take these pills to change body chemistry. And they do change it to some degree. Unfortunately, they're not making it better. They're not making it perfect. They're just suppressing a symptom. If you don't think physical illness creates mental distress, what happens to you when you walk around with a pebble in your shoe all day? See the state of your health at night. You're irritable, you're nervous, you're jumpy, you're ready to jump down somebody's throat. Of course, because physical illness causes emotional depression. Look at the kids who drop acid. Now, here's a perfect example. You take a perfectly healthy body, you introduce LSD, which is a noxious chemical, which throws body chemistry out of balance, throwing the kid into a temporary state of schizophrenia. Sometimes a permanent state of schizophrenia. A change in body chemistry does affect the emotions. No question about this. We'll talk about that later. We're going to take questions in a little while. But first, let's understand, if we can regulate your body chemistry, if we can keep the ovaries working properly with a good, strong, healthy nerve supply, we've done a tremendous amount to bring about emotional stability. You'd be surprised how many patients come under chiropractic care either because of emotional tension or come under chiropractic care for some other condition and mention under care that their emotions are a lot better. They're more relaxed. They're not as jumpy as they were. They don't overeat as much. They don't have to smoke cigarettes now. There are many things that change because of chiropractic care. Many things that we do out of tension that we stop doing when the tension is gone. And the tension is gone when we restore a balance of body chemistry. Here's another thing about nerve supply to those ovaries. We don't know too much about different types of cancer. There's one kind of cancer we do know about, and that is breast cancer in the female. I say in the female because it's almost unknown in the male. The only time a male is ever subject to breast cancer is if he's ever been getting hormone shots. And breast cancer is caused by an excess of the female hormone. And this is the only form of cancer on which science is prepared to state a cause. Maybe not the only cause, but a cause of breast cancer definitely is an excess of the female hormone. All right, if we can restore nerve supply to those ovaries so they'll manufacture the proper quantity and quality of chemicals again, haven't we eliminated a great cancer factor? Here's another thing on cancer while we're talking about it. The liver, among its many, many jobs, hundreds of jobs, has one job which relates to that female hormone. It has the job of detoxifying the body, of getting rid of that excess of female hormone. So if the liver is working right, that's a protection against that extra hormone. But if we cut down the nerve supply to the liver, and that liver now is only working at 80%, well, you're asking for trouble, aren't you? This is why chiropractors say every human being needs a good, strong, healthy nerve supply to every organ in the body. There's only one thing wrong with this whole setup, and it's great the way I describe it, but there's one thing wrong, and that is when something happens to knock your spine out of alignment, you don't always know it. I think it'd be great if every time one of these bones of the spine went out of alignment, a big red light in your forehead would light up and say, tilt, you see? And then you'd know to go to a chiropractor. Unfortunately, when something happens, an accident, a whiplash, an injury, you knock one of these bones out of alignment, the amount of energy cut down is so slight you don't even notice it. And 10, 20, or 30 years go by. It may take 20 years of parathyroid malfunction before you get arthritis. And then you go to the chiropractor and say, what can you do for my arthritis? I want an overnight cure. I've only had it for 6 months. But in reality, you've had the condition that caused it for 20 years. I think it would be a great thing if you didn't have to wait until you got the disease before you got chiropractic care. Wouldn't it be a great thing if everybody could have a good, strong nerve supply all of the time? You didn't have to wait until you got sick. Well, you can. And that's the point that I'm making tonight. The purpose of chiropractic care is not to treat sick people, certainly not to treat backaches and stiff necks. It's not meant to cure cancer. The purpose of chiropractic is very simple. Let's keep every human being with a good, strong, healthy nerve supply. In so doing, we have eliminated the major factor that causes illness. If we can keep this body working at its optimum, it will fight off bacteria. Regular chiropractic care will do what for you? It will reduce your chances of getting bacterial infections, gallstones, kidney stones, cancer, you name the disease, arthritis. As long as your body's working right, it has less chance of getting these diseases than if it has a rundown nerve supply, that's all. Now, to me, this makes the greatest deal of sense. It's the only healing factor that makes the slightest bit of sense at all. To me, what people have been doing is a fool's game. Waiting until 20 years of disease makes symptoms evident, and then say, hey, doc, give me a miracle. You know, you talk to people about chiropractic care. You go out and you say, hey, why don't you go see Dr. Toomer and Dr. Cadell? And your friends say, yeah, that's a good idea. If I ever get sick, I'm going to go see them. If I ever get sick. They're waiting and waiting and waiting. How many times do you hear about a guy who feels great one day, and the next day suddenly drops dead of a heart attack right on the street? Everybody's amazed. Gee, you never did that before. No? And that's the same guy you've been talking to all these years. Is you when I get sick. Sometimes the first symptom is already too late. Well, you know, how many people have you known over the years that have been strong and healthy and you wouldn't suspect anything wrong? First thing you know, they're admitted to the hospital with terminal cancer. Well, they didn't get that terminal cancer through sleeping with a bedroom window open last night. That thing's been building in their body for years, and any time along the way, if somebody had come along and turned back that life to 100%, maybe they wouldn't have had the cancer. That's the job of chiropractic, not to wait until it's too darn late. But as soon as life energy is cut down, to have it turned back on again. There's no point in walking around this way, feeling fine, waiting. That's like the fellow who falls off the top story of the Empire State Building. And as he passes every window on the way down, he says, well, I feel fine so far. Huh? And when he hits the bottom, it's too late. The time for chiropractic care is before you get to the bottom to maintain the integrity of the nervous system to keep you healthy. Let me explain to you for a couple of minutes some of the things that knock your spine out of alignment and allow this to happen. Because it may have happened to you. Did you ever sit parked at a Or stopped at a stop sign and some clown doesn't have good brakes or isn't looking where he's going and he wraps you from behind and throws your head back. That kind of a whiplash can knock your spine out of alignment. Any kind of a fall or accident or injury. You ever sit down on a chair that some smart aleck pulled out from under you? Oh, that's smart. So you slip on the ice and land on your rear end. Or you walk up 2 steps when there are really 3 there. Or walk down 3 when there are only 2. That's just as bad. Any kind of an accident or an injury or fall. You ever try and move one of those garage doors that gets stuck and it won't go and it won't go and then all of a sudden it goes and you go with it and you throw your back out? Or the storm windows are great for that. They'll do exactly the same thing to you. You ever sit down at the kitchen table and have one of those cabinet doors swing open over your head? And just, well, you've had that, huh? Or you lift the packages out of the back of the car and you stand up too soon and get yourself one on top of the head. You feel about 2 inches shorter when you've done that. And everybody knows how to lift, right? You've all been taught how to lift. You keep your back straight and you bend your legs and you use the long, strong muscles of your legs for lifting. Except try and lift the baby out of the crib that way sometime. Or lift the packages out of the trunk of the car when you come home from the supermarket. You can't lift them that way. You have to bend and twist and turn. And occupational things knock your spine out. The poor old dentist who works with one arm up in the air while he's working on lowers. Then he works the other way, working on uppers for a while. The painter who works with his head thrown back while he's painting ceilings. The mechanic twisting and turning under automobiles. The draftsman bending over a board in poor posture all day long. The salesman carrying a heavy satchel. The mailman with a heavy bag over one arm. The taxi driver or the truck driver sitting hunched up behind a wheel all day fighting the traffic. There's almost no occupation that doesn't have this kind of a problem. Even the girls with their occupations. You ever watch a stenographer? Beautiful posture when they sit and type. Until the phone rings. Then the phone goes under their ear this way while they're talking and typing at the same time. 15 minutes later, they say, gee, it must have been a draft. Or you watch them around the house. Lifting the vacuum cleaner, turning the mattresses. They're going to move the drapes, you see, or vacuum the drapes. And they stand up on a chair and they reach as far as they can. And then, well, I can't be bothered to move the chair. I'll lean a little farther. And all of a sudden, there it goes, huh? Lifting the baby, lifting anything around the house, reaching into the backs of cabinets, turning over mattresses. These are the things that injure the spine. Postural things. Let me see if I can do one thing tonight, even for those of you that are not patients and are not smart enough to become patients. If you never... Let me encourage you sleeping on your... Getting more and more frequent and the periods of feeling well. If your bed is built with a resting table with a hole for your nose, lie straight down and breathe. Getting more and more frequent and the periods of feeling well. Decide to breathe and then you pull these muscles out of alignment. Break that habit of sleeping on your stomach. It's a bad one. All right? Have you ever watched the kids? You wonder about subluxations and by the time you get to the chiropractor, many of these damages have been done for 20 or 30 years. You know, when a fellow has a heart attack at age 42, it's not because he had an accident in the car last year or the year before. It's probably because he fell off his tricycle when he was 3 years old. Many of the subluxations, incidentally, and the subluxation is what the chiropractor calls it when that bone is twisted out of alignment and irritates the nerves. When that bone is not where it belongs. That's a subluxation. And what the chiropractor does to correct it is to give it an adjustment. Somebody asked me yesterday, new patient, he said, would you crack my back? And I looked at him, I said, is that what you really want? You want me to crack your back, or would you like a scientific chiropractic adjustment? He said, yeah, I'll take one of those. He didn't know what it was, but he knew it's got to be better than getting your back cracked. So a chiropractor adjusts these subluxations. And I think probably the very first subluxation may well come with birth. Birth is the most natural, normal thing in the world, if you leave it alone. But unfortunately, our obstetricians don't like babies to be born at 1 o'clock in the morning. You see, it's inconvenient. Incidentally, I found out why they're always born at 1 o'clock in the morning. It takes exactly 9 months. But it's not always convenient for the obstetrician to come out at 1 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever. So they like to give drugs to get all of their mothers to deliver at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday because Wednesday is the golf day, you see? And don't ever have a heart attack in Detroit on a Wednesday unless you're going to have it on the golf course. That's the only place you're going to find any help. All right. So Because it's inconvenient to have babies when nature wants them, they give drugs to produce a delivery before nature is ready. The mother's muscles aren't ready. They can't participate. The baby is not even in position yet. He can't participate. So the obstetrician has to do the job with forceps. And he grabs that little kid around the neck and he twists. And that's what causes a subluxation. The poor kid comes out into this world with the primary damage already done to his nervous system, setting the stage for gallstones 35 years later, or kidney stones 50 years later. Is it any wonder we're not leading a normal life when that kind of butchery is done before we're even out in the world? And if you don't know about that, just watch little Johnny when he gets up in the morning. What's the first thing he does? He falls out of bed. Now he climbs back in and kicks out his brother. That's two. They come down to breakfast on the stairs, one stair at a time on their rear end. Bump, bump, bump. Right? Then they sit down, they eat breakfast, beat each other over the heads with a cereal bowl a couple of times. They go out to play. Well, they fall off their skates, and they roll down the hill, they fall off their swing, they fall off their tricycle, they fall out of a tree. This falling out of a tree is interesting because they wouldn't do it if you'd leave them alone. But you see them there and you get scared. You say, Johnny, come out of that tree, you'll fall. Poor kid never had any idea of falling until he put the fear of God into him. Now he's going to fall, and he does. So he comes in for lunch, just in case any of these bones are still in place where they belong, lined up. What does he do? Before he sits down for lunch, he dives into the sofa head first a half a dozen times, just to crunch everything in. Now, and you wonder, what I wonder about is how they ever grow up at all. All right, all of these things knock the spine out of alignment. What I want to suggest to you is don't wait until it's too late. Let's take the whole family into the office for a chiropractic checkup on a regular basis. Let me tell you this, I'm a chiropractor and a good one. And even I don't know when I'm subluxated. Right now, one of these bones in my spine could be out. I have no way of knowing it, but I'll guarantee you one thing. I'm going to find out before I go to bed tonight. Because I'm going to call Dr. Toomer and I'm going to say, would you please check me? You see, the only way even a chiropractor can know if his spine is out of alignment is by having another chiropractor check him. You can't know when you need an adjustment, when you need a visit to the chiropractor. That's why you don't go when you feel sick. By then it's already too late. The time to see a chiropractor is on a regular prevention basis. It really upsets me to see a woman coming in to get well and leave her husband and kids home to get sick. Or a man coming in to get well and leave his wife and kids home to get sick. Maintenance care is the only intelligent approach to health. And what's even worse is the person who comes in to get healthy. They come in, they've got XYZ disease, they've got diabetes, and they are under care for 2 years, 3 years. All of a sudden, you don't see them anymore. You call them up, what happened? Well, I'm not diabetic anymore. I've been doing fine. Each month we've been cutting down on the insulin. Now I'm fine. Yes, but now you need maintenance care. Oh, no, Doc, I'm fine. If I ever get sick again, I'll come and see you. Now, that doesn't make sense, does it? We have one corner in my town in Spring Valley, New York, where we used to have a great number of traffic accidents. And the town council put up a street light there. And when they put up the street light, there'd be no more accidents. Except a couple of years later, we had a new town board, and they said, what do we need a traffic light there for? There's no accidents. And because there were no accidents in that corner, they took away the traffic light. Now we have accidents all over again. And well, this is what you do with your chiropractic care. You use chiropractic to get healthy, and then you stay healthy for a while, and you say, you know, I'm so healthy I don't need chiropractic care. So you stop. Don't do it. Maintenance care is the only intelligent answer to health. All right, one other thing, and then I'm going to quit and turn it over to you. I said I was going to answer your questions. I hope I've answered most of them. If I haven't, we're going to throw it open to question and answer now. But here's one other thing that I want to apprise you of, and perhaps you haven't thought of this. Many of you owe your health, and some of you owe your life to chiropractic care. I know I do. Frankly, I would not be alive if it were not for chiropractic care. It's that simple. If I'm excited about chiropractic, if I get turned on by this whole thing, it's simply because I've seen it firsthand. And if I don't get excited, who should? It's one of those things. But some of you, I know, owe your life, and certainly your health, to chiropractic. Those that do, I want to ask you to do something. Not for me, and not for Dr. Cadell, and not for Dr. Toomer. For yourself, and for mankind at large. Somebody you know needs chiropractic care. Remember this, somebody once thought enough of you to suggest you go to a chiropractor. And you did, and I guess you're not sorry. All right, the greatest cause of death and disease in this country today is not heart disease, it's not high blood pressure, it's not cancer, it's not even war or traffic accidents. The greatest killer is this vertebral subluxation which chokes off life. and the ignorance which permits that to happen without people knowing about it. Right now, within a block of where you live, there's somebody sick who needs chiropractic care, or somebody who doesn't even know that he's sick, who's walking around like this, waiting to suddenly drop on the streets of a perforated ulcer or a heart attack or a stroke or some other thing. The greatest killer of them all is ignorance, and only you can dispel that. We chiropractors can't do it all. Send them into the office and we'll take care of them, but you have to be the one to go and tell them. As I said, you'd have never found out about chiropractic if somebody hadn't told you, and they won't either. With knowledge comes responsibility. Now, those of you that have never been chiropractic patients, you can't go and tell people how great chiropractic is because you don't know. Don't take my word for it. I can show you how to prove it in a minute. But in the meantime, if you've never been a chiropractic patient, don't tell a soul. Those of you that have had your health restored through chiropractic, you're the ones I want to get after, because you owe it, not to Dr. Toomer, to Dr. Goodell, you owe it to your fellow man to pass on the blessings of life and health to them. If you don't tell them, nobody will. If you don't get the word around, somebody's going to die prematurely or spend weeks or months rotting away in a hospital or have vital organs cut out because nobody ever got to them. This is the responsibility that comes with knowledge. To those of you that have never been a chiropractic patient, I've come out with a lot of dashing theories tonight. I've given you some really strong stuff, and I have no way of proving any of it. But you can prove it, whether you're sick or healthy. And I love to get these guys who think they're healthy. Get yourself under chiropractic care and see what it feels like to be healthy for the first time. People who think they're healthy. It's like driving a car with the emergency brake on. You ever do that? After a while, you don't even notice it's on, and you drive around, you get used to it, and you think it's meant to be that way. Some of you have been down so long, you're beginning to think it's up. All right, let's give you a chance to feel what up is really like. Why don't you experiment with yourself? The worst thing that can happen is that your overall health is going to improve. That's the one great thing about chiropractic. There are no side effects, no dangerous side effects of any kind. The only thing we have is what we call fringe benefits. That you come in for one condition and other things get well. You know, every drug, every medication has side effects. I don't know whether you know this. Some of these side effects are pretty dangerous now. They have one pill out now where the side effects are so dangerous you have to be in perfect health to take it. I mean, that's a powerful drug. All right. The only thing that you're going to find in chiropractic are the fringe benefits of an increase and an improvement in your overall health. If you think you're healthy now and you've never had chiropractic care, see what it feels like when you get the power turned on. And for the first time, perhaps in years, you begin to function at your proper level of health. And I want to give you a little word of warning, you fellas. If you've got your wife under chiropractic care and she's walking around with all that energy, you better get yourself under care too, or you're going to be in big trouble. All right? Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
Is there any set maintenance program that you recommend?
Good. All right. A maintenance program would actually be based upon your individual needs. It might depend upon your occupation, upon your body structure, upon your muscle tone, upon how long you've had the initial subluxation. There are many things. I can't give you an average. It would depend upon too many different factors. Some patients might need to see their chiropractor every month for maintenance care, some every week. Some may have to see a chiropractor every day for a while. In the beginning, when you first come into a chiropractor, usually it's very frequent visits for a while until your body begins to hold these bones in place. And then gradually he cuts down and sees how well you hold your adjustment. And the more you hold, the more he will stretch out between visits. So it's a trial and error thing based upon your individual response. Yes, ma'am. How does the chiropractor feel about the use of birth control pills? We are unalterably opposed to all dangerous drugs, particularly this one. Almost every other drug is given at least with the intention of making the body work better. It's trying to make you healthy. This is the only drug I know of that is, no, it's one of two drugs that are given with the deliberate intent of making your body malfunction, to deliberately make you sick. The side effects are blood clots, cancer, dizziness. There's such a list of side effects, it's unbelievable that this pill is still allowed on the market. We are unalterably opposed to it. The other pill, which I object to so strongly, is the amphetamines, which are dispensed like candy for overweight people to allow them to make pigs of themselves and become so sick that they lose weight in spite of overeating. And if you ever wonder why the kids on the colleges and in the high schools and the junior high schools are hung up on drugs in a drug-oriented society, don't blame the heroin pushers, don't blame the mafia, and don't blame the Turkish government for allowing them to refine heroin. Because the big problem in our high schools today is not heroin, and it's not marijuana, which is virtually harmless. The big problem is amphetamines. The same stuff the kids are getting at home. Every kid knows that if you want to get high, you just go out and buy a bottle of Dristan and open the stupid things up and sort out the different colors, you know, the blue from the yellow, from the red, from the white, and each one, you group them together, take all white for a while and float, and then you take all blue and you sleep for a week, and so on. The cause of this drug addiction on the college campuses, this so-called drug abuse, is not even the availability of the drugs, it's the attitude of the parents. Kids learn at home, you know, monkey see, monkey do, and the kids don't care what you say. They care what you do. And when mother wakes up in the morning and can't face the day without a wake-up pill to overcome the effects of last night's sleeping pill, and daddy can't tolerate mother's cooking without swallowing antacid tablets, and every day it's an ordinary morning headache and more pills, and ordinary laxatives and more pills, and ordinary this and more pills, and the gout's acting up again, we'll pop more pills, and my kidney stones are giving me trouble, we'll pop pills, and my shoulder's bothering me, I've got to take my cortisone pills. Pretty soon the kid learns that any time you're in a painful or unpleasant situation, the thing to do is run away and hide in a pill bottle. So when he gets to school, and he's in a situation he doesn't like, that's uncomfortable or painful, don't blame him when he runs away to hide in a pill bottle. Blame his parents who taught him, and most of all, blame the medical doctor and their allies, the drug industry, that have conned the American public into believing that drugs are harmless if you take them on prescription. They're not harmless, whether prescribed or not. Somebody had a bumper sticker here tonight that said, drugs are dumb, whether pushed or prescribed. And by golly, that is so true. If you don't want the kids to become drug addicts, then don't you be a drug addict. And the funny thing is, when we want help on drugs, when we need to know what to do with this terrible drug problem, whom do we turn to for help? We turn to the local medical doctor, a family physician, the same guy that got the kids hooked in the first place. And incidentally, it's interesting to note, there are more medical doctors addicted to hard drugs, I mean hard drugs, heroin, than any other individual profession. And second is doctors' wives. And third is the nursing profession. This is a frightening thing, that these leaders in the field of health have a greater addiction rate than the rest of the population. Yet when we have a problem with hard drugs, we ask them what to do. And they're the ones who caused it in the first place. All right, enough of a sermon. Sorry to give you such a long answer for a short question, but I'm not crazy about birth control pills. I recommend instead aspirin, held firmly between the knees. All right? Yes, sir.
You want to say anything about proper diet?
Not really. No, I'm all for proper diet, obviously. Your body is going to make its new cells out of the food we eat. So obviously, you can't live on coffee and Danish and expect your body to be able to make good food out of that. You must eat properly and wisely. Fortunately, our body knows more about that than our educated mind does. Sometimes we should listen more to our body and less to our mind. The body knows better. Yes, ma'am. I prefer my vitamins in the original form. Steaks, tomatoes, milk, food. Vitamin tablets have certain drawbacks. One is that you're only getting in your tablets or your pills whatever vitamins have been so far discovered. Now next year they're going to discover new vitamins, which I've been eating right along in my steaks. But the person who's been eating pills has been missing those. So good eating, there just is no substitute for good eating, that's all. Taking vitamin pills tends to encourage bad eating habits. So I'm opposed to the taking of vitamin pills. I'm in favor of good eating instead. Okay, next question. Yes. I warn you, I'm an old school teacher. If you don't ask questions, I will. Yes, gentleman at the back.
That all cells in the body replace
Right.
the brain.
Yeah. Apparently, the nerve fibers at the extremities do replace themselves. Nobody's quite sure about how fast. I remember years ago when chiropractors talked about nerves regenerating, the medical profession said, nonsense, no nerves regenerate. Now, of course, they've had to eat their words, and their own textbooks indicate that nerves do regenerate, but very slowly. Just how quickly, we really don't know. The latest estimate by the scientists is about a half an inch a year. If a nerve is degenerated, or if it's been cut, it will regenerate at the rate of about a half an inch a year. This is an estimate. And I think it's quite possible that some of the cells of the central nervous system replace themselves also. Or if not that, remember that this body always has a reserve of everything. There is no time that you're using all of the cells of your central nervous system. Your thinking capacity, it's been estimated you use between 5 and 10%. So if the 5 to 10% you think with were destroyed, you could conceivably learn all over again using a different 5 to 10% that hadn't been used. And the same is true of sensory and motor and trophic nerves. Because we don't use them all, if some is destroyed, you may not have to grow a new one. There may be a reserve supply already there, just out of use and waiting to be called upon. Nobody's really sure. I'm just giving you the various theories on this now. Okay? Yes, sir. Is there such a thing as a brain food? Not really. Yes and no. Certain food elements are essential. Now, you have to get them from somewhere. I've heard, for example, that fish is a brain food, and this is nonsense. Fish is good food. I'm not knocking it. But whatever nutritional elements there are in fish can be found in other foods. If you don't like fish, you can get it elsewhere. So that certain nutrients have certain functions within the body, but no food is an essential of itself. Nutrients are essential, but they are to be found in many foods. There's not really such a thing as a brain food, any more than there is such a thing as an aphrodisiac food. And people have been chasing for years to find an aphrodisiac food, and we talk about oysters and all kinds of things. Doesn't work, fellas. Forget it. I tried. No. There's just no such thing. Yes? Well, any kind of poisoning is poisoning. And I'm very proud at this stage of the game to be a chiropractor, to have been in the forefront of this profession, or to have been a part of this profession which is in the forefront of the fight against pollution. For years now, the chiropractic profession has stood alone in warning about air pollution, food pollution, water pollution, and body pollution. Let's not forget body pollution and blood pollution, the introduction of noxious chemicals into the bloodstream of defenseless infants. I'm opposed to that too. Mercury poisoning, of course, is intolerable to our society. Unless mankind, particularly in these United States, does something to stop this pollution problem pretty darn soon, we are going to be in very, very serious trouble. Unfortunately, the very companies which are polluting the air have now formed subsidiary companies whose job is to eliminate pollution. There are anti-pollution companies owned and operated by the companies that pollute the water. Isn't this beautiful? Now it's good business to pollute the water because it drums up business for an anti-pollution company. This reminds me of our medical friends. In fact, it's the same organization, the drug companies. But our medical friends, they give you drugs which make you sick, and then they sell you another drug to take care of the side effects of the first drug, which then makes you sick, so you need to buy another drug to take care of that. It's a never-ending fight. There's only one intelligent way to handle things, and that's to kick the profit motive out of this thing entirely and teach people the value of a healthy body. Yes, ma'am. All right, this is a very good question. Does chiropractic have any effect on the condition of the teeth and the hair? Yes. Chiropractic, in restoring nerve supply, raises the level of health of all parts of the body. However, as long as we don't use our teeth, we're going to lose them. We don't chew food anymore. We buy our food pre-chewed, pre-digested. We don't use our teeth, and because we don't, we are going to lose them. There's no question that mankind, probably in another 1,000 years, if he survives that long, just won't have any teeth at all. He doesn't use them. And this is nature's way of changing, adapting according to use. The same is true of hair. I think hair is definitely on the way out. All right. Enough said. If a person is suffering from baldness or loss of hair from a condition, say, like alopecia, which is a sickness, If there's a disease which causes a loss of hair coming out in clumps and that kind of thing, then chiropractic restoring the body to normal would end that disease process. But most hair loss, most baldness in men is a hereditary factor. It's not a sickness. It's a sign of perfectly normal hereditary laws at work. So there's nothing to be done about it. Chiropractic won't end that because chiropractic makes the body work naturally and normally. Like people say, will chiropractic stop people from getting fat if they overeat? On the contrary. On the contrary. It may stop you from overeating, but if you overeat, you're still going to get fat. Yes? Why isn't everyone born beautiful and good looking? I think they are. I think what's...
But the fact that some people may have different shapes of the body, no different.
Oh, different shapes. You know, beauty is a thing that we have set up certain standards which are totally alien to other societies, what we consider to be beautiful. Even go back to Renoir and look at Renoir's paintings of beautiful women. And if those women were to walk into this room today, we'd say, hey, lady, lose 40 pounds. In those days, that particular shape and size was considered to be beautiful. Today, we tend to revere the starvation look. But that doesn't mean that it's any more beautiful. We tend to revere symmetry. We live in an age where man is so simple-minded. We live in such a geometric age that we want to see symmetry, where it's equal on both sides. Heaven forbid we should see somebody with one blue eye and one brown eye. But that might well be beautiful. Blue and brown go very well together. And what's unbeautiful about blue and brown? But we say, oh, he's an oddball, he's a freak. I think everybody is born beautiful. Yes, ma'am. Oh, that's very easy. How come a person who suffers from hay fever only suffers from it at a certain time of the year? Hay fever is the inability of the body to properly neutralize this foreign protein, usually ragweed pollen. So you don't have a problem if there's no pollen around. But what I'm saying is when there's no pollen around, you haven't solved your problem. You're still a hay fever patient now. You still have hay fever, even though you're not sneezing. You're not sneezing because there's no pollen. But since we can't eliminate pollen, the obvious thing to do is get the body to working properly. When the body works properly, then you won't sneeze even in the presence of pollen. I don't know if I made that clear or more complicated. More complicated, all right. In order for a person to have hay fever, they must have two things. One is ragweed pollen. Two is a body which is not working right. A body which is unable to neutralize that ragweed pollen. Now, to blame the ragweed pollen is ridiculous, because if that alone were at fault, we'd all sneeze. But most of us, when our body is working right, manufacture the chemicals to neutralize the pollen. But even if your body is not working right, and you can't neutralize the pollen, you still wouldn't sneeze if there's no pollen around. If you go to Arizona where there's no ragweed pollen, you wouldn't even know that you have hay fever. Incidentally, that's not true. I was out in Arizona. They have more hay fever sufferers there. New York sends all its hay fever sufferers to Arizona. Little do they know when they get there, they're going to suffer just as much. It's true. They're not cured. No, that's right. They used to have ads in New York, send your sinuses to Arizona. And we did, and it didn't work. Yes?
If the dog had rabies and infected somebody,
yeah. The chiropractor, all right, the question is, if a rabid dog bit somebody, what would a chiropractor suggest? He wouldn't suggest anything. Chiropractors don't deal with rabies. Chiropractors deal with raising the level of resistance of the human body. And our job with everybody, bitten by rabid dogs or not, is to raise the level of their resistance by giving them a good, strong nerve supply. Now, you're going to have to make a value judgment as to whether you now want to run for a rabies shot or not. I frankly believe the medical textbooks when they tell me that the rate of rabies in treated patients and the rate of rabies in untreated patients is exactly the same. So I believe them when they say that. Therefore, I'm not going to get any shot myself. I wouldn't tell you to get a shot or not. I know that my body's under good, strong chiropractic care. No, that's not true, because even if it weren't, I wouldn't get the rabies shot. I'm more scared of the shot than I am of the rabies. But I wouldn't tell you that. See, that's not a chiropractor's judgment to make. A chiropractor doesn't treat rabies any more than he treats cancer. He merely keeps the human body functioning at its highest level to give you the best chance of fighting off rabies or rabies shots, whichever you want to fight off. Okay? Yes, sir.
I think in life, you choose to live for two sets of goals.
One is a very short-term goal, one is a long-term goal. I think one of the questions that people might have is either in terms of a very short-term goal, would a drug or something be worthwhile?
Oh, all right. This is a very good question. On the short term, certainly drugs work. There's no question that if you have a pain and you got a shot of Demerol, you'll knock out the pain. Now, how much is it worth sacrificing so many hours, days, or weeks of life later on? There's no question when you take that shot of Demerol, you're going to pay the price eventually. There is no drug and no medication that does not have deleterious side effects on every single human being who takes it. That must be clearly understood. There was a pamphlet recently put out by the March of Dimes which emphasized this point. Every single drug and medication has side effects in every single case, whether noticeable or not. Now, knowing that, now you make a judgment as to whether the pain is more than you can bear and you need the shot. But this is an individual judgment to make. I can't make it for anybody. They have to make it for themselves. The threshold of pain varies from person to person. I'm the kind of a nut who can tune out pain. I just tune it out. I won't think about it. And the funny thing is, you can't have pain unless you're thinking about it. It has to come into your consciousness for you to feel it. It's like being broke. Unless you're thinking about money, there's no way you can be broke. You may not have any money, but if you're not thinking about it, you're not broke. You only have broke when you think about money. And similarly, you only have pain when you're thinking about it. How many people with a raging toothache have it stopped the minute they walk in the dentist's office? Huh? Because their fear is greater than their pain. Now, don't tell me this is not in the mind. It is. Their fear is greater than their pain. They shut it out. Hey, I feel much better. I'm leaving. Huh? So, how bad is the pain? How important is it? I don't know. But remember, when you take a drug or a medication, remember it is injuring your body and your life. To what degree will depend upon the drug. And somebody else over here first. Yes?
Yes, I know some states require these shots for preschool.
Yep.
And what can you do about that? Is the law?
All right. The question was, some states require by law that you poison the bodies of your children with vaccines. I don't think the questioner used the word poison. That's my term. What should you do about it? Obviously, change the law. And where I'm concerned, and my children are concerned, violate the law. Now, I'm not telling you to violate the law. I'm saying there are no circumstances under which I would permit these poisonous vaccines to be introduced into the bodies of my children. I will violate any statute. And I will violate any MD who comes around me with a needle. But I think the best solution to this is to change the laws. You know, freedom of health choice is at stake here. We're talking about poisoning the drinking water with fluorine, whether you want it or not, mass medication, compulsory mass medication with vaccines. I guess the next thing is going to be, because the country is too tense, compulsory tranquilizers in your drinking water. Maybe compulsory birth control pills in your drinking water to suppress the population explosion. How far is Big Brother going before we get up on our hind legs and say enough? There is freedom of choice at stake here. Good Lord, if Billy Smith has a mother who's afraid of smallpox or measles or German measles, they let her give him the shot. But don't force it on me. As a matter of fact, if you've all had the smallpox vaccine, then you don't care if I get smallpox, because there's no way I can pass it on to you, is there? If the vaccine works, what are you scared of? The fact is, if these vaccines worked, they wouldn't have to come after you and put a pistol to your head to make you use them. They just simply don't work in the first place. This rubella vaccine they've been shoving down people's throats, they said 15% of the victims having side effects was an acceptable number, according to the National Communicable Disease Foundation in Atlanta, Georgia. But Dr. Endon, the immunologist who did the research work up at Harvard, he said 15% hell. 35% of the kids are coming down with side effects. Some of them lifetime crippling side effects of rheumatoid arthritis. Now, I don't think that price is worth paying, and I won't pay it.